achieved.
We could be on the cusp of something monumental happening in the world of professional mixed martial arts. Earlier today, it was announced that I believe it's tomorrow going down, a group of fighters, including George St. Pierre, Cain Velasquez, and Donald Cerrone, name a few, along with Bjorn Rebney, are about to make an announcement that will forever redefine mixed martial arts. I'm assuming it's a fighters union of some kind, and when you have names like St. Pierre, but more importantly, names like Cain Velasquez and Donald Cerrone, high-profile contracted UFC fighters, jumping into this, I have to imagine there's a lot more than just that. We are going to be looking at a situation that's going to improve the face of mixed martial arts, specifically for the fighters. We'll see how it turns out. I could be wrong, but I struggle to believe it'll be anything but that. Obviously, it's not going to be a new organization starting up. I have to assume it's a fighters union. Let's go with that. I think it'll be a good thing, giving the fighters a chance to negotiate and get better terms and not do it individually, do it as a group. It's going to be positive. Obviously, there'll be some issues initially when it comes out. I'm sure the UFC will have a statement and do their best to dissuade them from signing up. But if you get enough star power behind it, I can't see them cutting guys like Cain Velasquez, like Donald Cerrone and company, knowing that Bellator will swoop in, World Series of Fighting will pick them up, any of the other big organizations will pick them up, and the UFC will suffer as a result. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. Always, I'm your host, Scott Johnson.
Who the fuck is that guy?
And on this episode of the show, we're bringing in the upcoming UFC. It's actually the Ultimate Fighter 24 finale, which will take place on December 3rd. The main event is not officially set yet, but spoiler alert, I will be breaking down the fight that has been rumored to be happening and that I kind of anticipated would be the matchup in the main event. In the event I am incorrect in assuming who I think is going to win and be in the finals, I will post a prediction for Demetrious Johnson versus the other fighter on my website once it is decided, but I'll go ahead with the other prediction I'm making at the end of the show. I'll be bringing in all 6 main card fights for you for the event. All of my preliminary predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. There are currently 6 prelims available. I'm guessing there'll be at least 1, possibly even 2 fights added from the show. Wouldn't surprise me at all. We'll see what kind of time I have to get those fights broken down and predicted. I don't know if I'll get there or not, but I'll certainly do my best. Bet packs will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net as well. You can purchase them for $12 or the subscription for all of December. Usually you save upwards to $12 to maybe even $18, depending on how things go. I'm coming off my 3rd straight showing where my gold parlay won. Unfortunately, we lost a couple other fights in the card, and now I've been taking, not criticism, certainly I did notice. I took some shots from a particular fellow handicapper who I believe he had some of his facts incorrect about what I do. But again, what I'm going to be doing with my parlays going forward in the future, and I'm trying to start it here, is I'll be posting 2 sets because I recognize that not everyone has the ability to bet hundreds and thousands of dollars even on single fights or 2-fight parlays. There are some people who want to bet $10, $15, $20 on 3, 4, even 5-leg parlay simply because they like the risk, they want the big reward, and it's not the end of the world. They want something to bet on. So I'm catering to both sides. So what I'll be doing is I'll be posting big budget parlays in one section that'll be that you'd play is if you were betting, you had a big bankroll, and then I'll be posting the bigger risk parlays in another section saying if you don't have as big a bankroll, this is what I would suggest you bet. All right, they won't be congruent. I'm going to break it down, so you have to keep an eye out for that. So certainly if you are a guy who's looking to bet, or a girl for all that matter, looking to bet, between $10 and $100 on the card and just want to have some fun, take some risks, I'll certainly be posting predictions that will work, or bet parlays that will work for you. If you want to go the other route and bet a lot on a little and look for a mild return, I'll be posting stuff for you as well. Certainly consider picking them up. A lot of fights coming up in December. Very much looking forward to breaking down all of them. And let's get to our first main card prediction. The first main card fight takes place in the UFC's flyweight division. The number 12th ranked Brandon the Assassin Baby Moreno, 12-3-0, takes on Ryan Babyface Benoit, a battle of babies here, with a current record of 9 wins and 4 losses. That's the first big fight for Moreno after upsetting Louis Smoka in a short notice fight. Arguably, Benoit is a step back in competition, but certainly more appropriate for where Moreno is at his career trajectory at this point in time. Benoit is coming off a set win that I predicted correctly. He had a UFC 185 upset win over Sergio Pettis, but was unable to capitalize on that and lost the fight in between against Ben Nguyen. Interestingly enough, Pettis is the man that Moreno stepped in to replace in his fight with Smoka. So, everybody's interconnected somehow. Physically, Moreno 2 inches taller. He's also the younger man by 4 years. The reach wasn't listed. I didn't have a chance to check it out. Now, Moreno, on his career, 9 wins by submission, 1 knockout win, 2-3 when fights go the distance, 5-3 overall when fights go outside the first round, and a lot of those victories have come in more recent bouts. He had a lot of struggles early on in longer fights, but he certainly seemed to have cleaned that up. He is a BJJ. He comes from a BJJ background. Submitted on the Ultimate Fighter in the opening round. He was one of the lower ranked fighters and put up a heck of a good fight in the opening round. prior to the UFC, he fought some lower level competition. He had some issues on the mat in the regional scene, but still ultimately got the win because of his grappling skills. But that victory against Smolka certainly shot his stock up significantly. Ultimately, what happened in that fight is Smolka rushed in for an early takedown, kind of got a little bit sloppy. It was a short notice fight, so maybe he was overlooking his opponent. He shot in on Smolka. Smolka rushed in. My apologies. Took him down, went for a takedown. Moreno countered, took him down, and was able to get on top for a period of time. Kept his head low in the guard, was laying some shots to the top. Not a ton of offense from top position, but still. And then when they got back to the feet and had to scramble, boom, he got Lewis in a choke and locked it up. Very tight squeeze, forced Smolka to eventually submit. Fight over. Very impressive. Not a ton of striking in that fight. He did land a couple of good lefts early, both to the head and body of Smolka in succession. He showed a pretty good heart and a pretty scrappy affair in the Ultimate Fighter in that fight as well. But certainly he's a game fighter. Now for Benoit, he's a guy who's both capable and vulnerable on the feet and on the mat. And he tends to be very aggressive on the feet, which ultimately opens him up and hurts his cardio. So again, he's one of these guys, he live by the sword, die by the sword type fighter. When he fought Anthony Pettis, he struggled a lot with the combinations of Pettis. He struggled a lot with the output, had a lot of issues keeping up, but ultimately landed a big left hand and scored the knockdown and eventually finished him on the mat. When he fought Freddie Serrano, he dropped him early with a straight right. He's the type of fighter who has a lot of big moments. He wins the fight, or he proceeds to not finish and then probably go on to lose the matchup, or at least doesn't turn it in his favor. When he fought Josh Sample, he struggled tremendously on the mat. Pettis took him down a couple times, had him success there. He did have his moments where he swept Sample and got on top, but he spent a lot of time on the ground in a negative position there and was ultimately submitted. When he fought Serrano, he attacked with the guillotine, got taken down, did a nice job getting back up. Serrano's a pretty good wrestler, and Benoit had a success getting off his back and getting back in the fight on his feet. Serrano in that, and Benoit did as well. It was a short notice fight for Benoit, but allowed him to get back in the fight, in a fight that he probably was his performance wasn't awesome, but it was enough. We'll put it that way. When you look at this matchup, I just don't trust Benoit in this fight. He seems to need that fight-changing moment, that fight-changing strike or big submission opportunity to turn fights in his favor. He is 7-0 when he can score wins by knockout. He is 2-4 in everything else. So that's concerning. Moreno is still very much a work in progress, but he's scrappy. I would give him the cardio edge, and I think he'll be able to maintain his attack longer. I think if Benoit eventually makes a mistake, it's put on the mat in a detrimental position, and my prediction is Brandon Moreno to defeat Ryan Benoit by submission. The second fight on the main card takes place in the women's bantamweight division as a pair of former title challengers go head-to-head as the number 7th ranked Sara McMann, 9 wins and 3 losses, takes on the unranked but returning Alexis Davis, fellow Canadian, along with myself. She has a current record of 16 wins and 6 losses. Now, McMann is trying to rebuild her reputation after the title fight crash and burn she had against Ronda Rousey, and then devastating losses against both Miesha Tate and Amanda Nunes. For Davis, she had a similar letdown where she was absolutely wiped off the board by Ronda Rousey, but she did rebound with a nice upset victory over Sarah Kaufman, who she had previously lost to twice. So certainly a big fight for her. Davis has been out of action for close to 20 months. She had a baby. And pregnancy, it's an issue that obviously when you're breaking down men, you don't take that into account, but with women, it's certainly a factor. So she took time away to start a family, at least to continue a family. I'm not sure of her actual status there. But the question is how she physically rebuilt herself. We just saw Dudieva fight, and Milena Dudieva fight, and she lost the fight, she got stopped, and I talked about that as an issue for her not having great cardio, and certainly it's not going to get better, I wouldn't think, coming out of that scenario. So we'll see how that affects Davis in this fight. Both girls are 5'6", 2-inch reach advantage for the Canadian, and she is 4 years younger than Sara McMann. Davis overall for her career, 2-3 in fights ended by knockout, 8-0 in fights ended by submission, though, and 7-3 on the scorecards. For McMann, as I said, she's a former Olympian, 1-1 in fights ended by knockout, 3-1 in fights ended by submission, 5-1 on the scorecards. And she has been working at TriStar, which is certainly worth noting as well. She getting some high-level training there. Now, McMann, it's not a surprise. Her success hinges heavily on her wrestling. 35 career takedowns in her last 7 victories. In her last 3 defeats, she has landed combined 1 takedown. She has very strong positional control once she gets on top and establishes that top game. She tends to struggle with activity. She does a good job working the crucifix position, which we've seen her use early in her UFC career against Sheila Gaff. It's something she likes to do if she can get there. But again, she seems more focused right now on maintaining control and holding that top position. When she fought Jessica Ai, she shot from the outside as a very sloppy and ineffective takedown attempt, which she did not get. But ultimately, the threat of her takedowns keeps her opponent from shooting in. Or from shooting forward to attack. They know she could shoot in at any moment, so they struggle sometimes to let their hands go. And that was the case in the Jessica Ai fight. Where McMann did have success, she landed some takedowns early against the cage when she got eye backed up, and then later on in the fight, she landed takedowns when I was throwing a kick just by itself, a single strike, and we saw McMann scoot and grab a leg and dump her on the ground and held top control and pretty much sealed the fight with that takedown. You know, on the other side of things, when she fought Miesha Tate and she fought Amanda Nunes, she had trouble in both those fights getting her wrestling going, and more importantly, when she did hit the mat, she got the worst of the exchanges. Tate both, really dominated her on the ground, and Nunes ended up submitting her after rocking her. Additionally, on the feet, McMann, not a lot of output versus eye, landed just 10 strikes in the opening round. She did drop Miesha early in that fight. I believe she even might have fractured her orbital bone, if I remember correctly. She throws a pretty decent right hand with some power. She'll pump that left jab, and if she does let her hands go, she can do some damage. But she has some issues with distance management. She's not stepping in, and she's afraid of getting countered, and that's something that's certainly going to limit the success of her offensive output. Now, Alexis Davis, 50% takedown defense in the UFC. Certainly that's a number worth stating. She's never really faced a fighter looking to take her down with regularity. Like Liz Carmouche, who's known for some wrestling, 1-for-1 on takedown attempts, but didn't shoot in a lot, obviously. And, Davis was taken down, but, won that fight, negated that takedown for the most part. On the offensive side of things, Davis has landed a takedown in almost all of her UFC wins. She's very well-rounded, capable striker, BJ black belt, also a black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Overall, she's a very good fighter. When she fought Sarah Kaufman in her last UFC appearance, she lost the first round badly on the feet, was getting beaten up in the second round, having a little bit more success, but caught Kaufman with a hip toss, put her down, and eventually worked her way to a triangle, and then an armbar for the finish, very well executed. So she's very dangerous on the mat given the opportunity. When she's standing, though, she's an excellent kicking repertoire. Will really attack that inside leg and do a lot of damage, take away her opponent's movement. She had a lot of success against Liz Carmouche and against Jessica Eye using that technique. She'll also go to the body and go to the head as well. But keep in mind, it opens up opportunities for her opponents, and specifically Sarah McMann, to grab a limb, shoot in for a takedown, and put her on the mat. Her striking, not bad. Hard combinations, fairly straight, cuts off the cage. When she cut off the cage against Carmouche, she had a lot of success. She can work in the clinch as well in dirty box. She does get hit a lot. She's a gritty fighter who likes to get in the mix. Over 4 strikes landed per minute right there with strikes absorbed as well. But she outlands McMann on average by over 2 strikes per minute, which is a pretty sizable number, especially considering, I'd say Davis has a bigger sample size and has faced better competition throughout her career for the most part. They face similar fighters, but you know what I'm saying. I've heard issues with McMann having issues getting excited or prepared or motivated for fights. She's seen a sports psychologist try and clear that up. That's certainly concerning. The layoff for Davis is also a major issue. The impact of a kid, the pressures of being a mom. I don't know if this is her first kid or not. I didn't come across that. The cardio factor is certainly worth looking at. But the way I look at things, McMann doesn't offer enough standing to win this fight. Her only route to victory is via takedowns, and Davis is very tricky off the back and could offer back and could make that scenario an unfavorable one for the American. If the conditioning and rust is an issue for Davis, McMann could capitalize and grind out this fight. But I think Davis is going to push her back with her pressure on the feet, use her kicks to damage her base, get McMann second guessing, telegraphing her shots. I think Davis overall is too diverse. And my prediction is Alexis Davis to defeat Sarah McMann by decision. Fight number 3 in the main card is in the UFC's light heavyweight division and features Hyun the Hulk Kuta Laba, 12-2-0 with 1-0 contest, representing the Republic of Moldova, taking on Jared the Killa Gorilla Cannonier with a current record of 8 wins and 1 defeat. Now, Cannonier is coming off, this is actually his first cut, so this is his first cut to 205 pounds. He's a former heavyweight. He fought twice in the UFC at 230 and 240 pounds, somewhere in that 235 range, actually, in a couple of his fights. So that's interesting to see how that comes down. He's coming off his first UFC win where he knocked out Cyril Asker, who's making his debut for that fight. For Kuta Laba, he's also coming off his first UFC victory, a decision win over Jonathan Wilson. He debuted with a competitive but ultimate submission loss to Misha Serkinov. Physically, despite the fact that Cannonier is coming down to division, Kuta Laba is 2 inches taller. Cannonier will have a 2-inch reach advantage, and he is 9 years older than his Moldovan? 9 years older than his opponent. We'll go with that. Both guys have very good finishing rates. Cannonier, 4 wins by knockout, 3 submission victories. He was knocked out by Sean Jordan in his UFC debut. 1 decision, which was a 5-rounder against longtime journeyman Tony Lopez. Actually, it was a split decision in one of his final pre-UFC bouts. For Kuta Laba, 9 knockout victories, 2 submission victories, 1-0 on the scorecards. He has 12 first-round wins, 9 of them coming in 12 first-round wins? That doesn't sound right. My math doesn't add up. But he has a lot of first-round wins, and a lot of them come inside the first 90 seconds. He's very good at finishing his opponent quickly. Kuta Laba is a willing striker. Sits in the pocket. He will exchange. He's a southpaw striker, but as we saw in his last fight against Wilson, he came out orthodox and he looked very comfortable. Looked very capable in that position. It really throws guys off because if they drill fighting a southpaw fighter and boom, here's this guy throwing an orthodox stance at you, that can really, throw a lot of things off that you were looking, to employ in your fight. So we'll see if he does something similar in this fight. He throws a lead left jab or hook. He'll paw with that left routinely to kind of break up that rhythm of his opponent and gauge the distance. He fires an overhand right behind it. He'll throw some spinning attacks. We saw him land some spinning elbows against Wilson. He's very creative that way. When he cuts, he can do a pretty good job of cutting off the cage, and he was walking Wilson down throughout that fight. He did have some times where he was chasing, but he kind of mixed between chasing and cutting off the cage. You can tell the difference in how effective one was versus the other. He did his best in that fight when he closed the gap, put his opponents back towards the cage, and unloaded with volume strikes that both had power and just that overwhelming nature to them. He can land some short strikes in the clinch, uppercuts, slam home a short right home hand, which he will frame well. That level trajectory elbow also something he'll mix in when the opportunity strikes him. Good chin overall. He ate some big shots. Not a ton of head movement, which means he's going to eat some big shots. And against some heavy hitters at light heavyweight, you do not want to be testing your chin too routinely. But he's a young guy, and he seems like that's something he's not too concerned about. We'll see if that eventually comes back to cost him. He did seem to be slowing down late in the second round, or he tried to get Jonathan Wilson out there, but ultimately couldn't. I keep saying ultimately a lot. I apologize for that. He couldn't put him away, tired him out, but he came back in the third round. Wilson was having more success in the third round, but Kuta Laba took that decision fairly handily. He can go to the ground. He took Serkinov down briefly. He has a decent takedown game on the regional scene, which could be a product of his opposition. Omoplata seemed to be a thing he really likes. He has both of his submission wins via that method, but in the UFC, it's very difficult to pull off that move. Some guys do, very few actually. Ben Saunders comes to mind. Now for Jared Cannonier at heavyweight, excellent movement, lots of feints and fakes, very light on his feet, and that's something we'll have to keep in mind when cutting down a division. Does that hold up? He was dropped with the right hand by Sean Jordan and finished, but he was starting to really open up in that fight prior to getting knocked out. He puts his punches together fairly effectively in combinations. He will switch stances. He moves his head well. He does a lot of things nice and correct in his striking. He throws a long right jab, some snappy low kicks. He has some power in his right hand as well. He dropped Asker with a left hand, actually. He ducked his head, kind of rolled it off the side, and fired that left hand while moving forward. Set it up with kind of a fake straight right initially. So very effective technique, very nice way to get it done. He will take the fight to the ground if the opportunity strikes him. Good BJJ player overall. I think he's a black belt, but I'm not 100% sure there. As I said, he was very quick for heavyweight, but how will that transfer to 205? That's a big issue. Arguably, that's what made him really effective at heavyweight, was his speed and his movement being something that fighters have trouble dealing with. At light heavyweight, guys are going to be faster. That's going to take away one of his elements. Additionally, how will his body react to the cut? He has very big legs. How is he going to cut that weight down to 205, and how will that impact him? Kuta Laba has shown that he can fight at a decent pace, even though he slowed down his last fight. He keeps constantly attacking. He needs to avoid overextending himself looking to finish. He needs to work on that head movement a little bit. Jared Cannonier is the type of guy you don't want to be taking too many shots against for fear of what the end result could be. I think ultimately Cannonier, if you can't get him out of there quickly, he's going to fade. He's going to struggle with the speed. That cut's going to come back to get him. He'll start to slow down, and Kuta Laba will eventually take him out. And my prediction is he owns Kuta Laba to defeat Jared Cannonier by TKO. Up next, it's the 170-pounders. Is the 15th ranked Jake the Juggernaut Ellenberger, 31 wins, 11 losses, takes on former Strikeforce title challenger Jorge Gamebred Masvidal with a current record of 30 wins and 11 losses. Wow, almost identical record, short of one win for the Juggernaut. Now, Ellenberger is coming off a UFC career-saving stoppage of Matt Brown, knocking him out. He had lost 2 in a row in 5 of his last 6. Top-level competition, but still, that's the type of run that gets you a pink slip, at least for most fighters. Ellenberger able to stick around and made good on that opportunity. For Masvidal, he was back in the win column in his last fight. He debuted with a win over Cesar Fajeda at welterweight, Fajeda coming down from middleweight. Had back-to-back split decision losses before beating Ross Pearson, who was a lightweight, moved up to 170 for a short notice fight. So Masvidal, he's had a very interesting. This is the first time he's actually fought somebody. He's fighting somebody, an established welterweight, if you will. I guess Lance Larkin would be considered an established welterweight, but Ellenberger kind of one of the old breeds, so we'll see how this plays out. Masvidal 2 inches taller, despite the fact he's coming up from the lighter weight class. 3-inch reach advantage as well. He is 1 year older than Ellenberger. These guys have been around for a long time. They're not that old, to be honest with you, considering their 30 plus fights, almost 40 plus fights, yeah. Masvidal's a boxer primarily. He has decent power, very good offensive and defensive wrestling, good grappling. He's a very diverse striker. Let's not hole him as just a boxer. He has a very good kicking game, very good knee strikes as well. So overall, he's a very talented fighter. He's almost got the Dennis Bermudez type issue. He tends to get hurt almost once a fight, and then he rallies, makes adjustments, and wins the fight, or at least gets back in it. We have seen him, for example, when he fought Rustam Khabilov. It cost him in a very close fight. He got rocked late, and that cost him the matchup. The thing is with Jake Ellenberger, he's got that type of power where Masvidal does not want to play with that factor. Do not let him crack you early, because even a guy like his Durbos, Matt Brown, was unable to rebound and eventually was taken out. Masvidal does a very effective job at popping out that left jab. Can move. Does it while moving backwards, which makes it even more effective. Good, short, crisp punches. He's a pocket puncher. He'll work the body as well, and good volume. Look for him to mix in a jumping knee. He'll throw some body kicks. Really mixes up his offense well. Constantly moves away under pressure when necessary, resets, and goes back at it. And he's very good at anticipating, seeing strikes coming, and parrying them, or at least moving out of the way. And, overall, he's just a very effective and technically sound ground game, both wrestling and grappling-wise. He can score takedowns. I don't anticipate he's going to take down Jake Ellenberger with too much ease, but at least he should be able to stay on his feet when need be. When you look at Jake Ellenberger, though, I would say he's improved his technical ability as a striker, but it has made him less dangerous. And I've talked about this several times before. He's not nearly as aggressive. He tends to wait on his opponents to sit back, look for that opening, and sometimes it never comes. The KO of Matt Brown was his first stoppage victory since Nate Marquardt back at UFC 158. He has been knocked out 3 times for his career, a lot of them coming in recent defeats, so certainly you've seen the pendulum switch there. When he took out Matt Brown, it was basically the tale of two strikes. He had a massive right hand early in that fight that dropped him and put Matt Brown in trouble. Brown actually was rallying, and then boom, Matt Brown, who's notorious for having a glass body, if you will, he gets kicked to the body and can be hurt, cracked the body with a massive body kick, and unable to respond, ground and pound, referee forced to stop it. But Jake had kind of emptied his gas tank after trying to get him out of there after the first initial strike landed, and Brown was pushing him back and just not letting his hands go, and Jake just threw it all into one strike. So basically it was 2 strikes, and Jake Ellenberger got himself a big-time win. Statistically, striking stats are almost even for the Juggernaut, and the Brown victory was just the second time over his last 9 fights where he actually outlanded his opponent offensively. So he has a lot of issues putting up offensive numbers that are better than his opponent. If you can't stop them, that certainly is an issue. As we see, he is 6-6 on the scorecard, so that's certainly there's a direct correlation between those numbers there. Now, he is a former NCAA Division I wrestler, BJ Purple Belt, but he has landed 2 or less takedowns in each of his last 12 fights, so he's certainly got away from his wrestling game, not using that dominant takedown, top control, and smash guys type approach, focusing more on his striking. When you look at the other these 2 guys matchup, Masvidal, I would say, has the advantage in offensive output, striking output at least. He should be the faster fighter, and his chin is probably better, his ability to deal with damage. Not perfect, but I'd say it's better. I would give him the edge in endurance as well. For Ellenberger, I would certainly favor him with the power. He's the better offensive wrestler if he opts to use it, and Masvidal defensively is pretty strong, so that could be a wash there. I think Masvidal in this fight is going to probably outwork him, use that jab, use a lot of movement, keep his pace up. He tends to have bad luck in close fights, but I think he can just pop, and pot shot Ellenberger and stay out of the range of those big power shots. That is going to be a massive advantage for him. The other scenario could be that we see Masvidal, he's got some pop in his hands, could put Jake down with one shot, or at least pile up the damage where eventually he does go down. But, Jake's been stopped by some big hitters, Robbie Lawler, Stephen Thompson, name a couple, Martin Kampman back in the day as well. So it's not like he's getting knocked out by just about anybody. But my prediction is Jorge Masvidal to defeat Jake Ellenberger by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we are taking a look at the coaches in the UFC's flyweight division. As the number 1 ranked Joseph Benavidez, 24 wins and 4 losses, takes on the number 2 ranked Henry the Messenger Cejudo with a current record of 10 wins and 1 defeat. Now, basically, this is, like I said, it's a tough coaches matchup. It's a battle of arguably 2 of the best flyweights to have lost to DJ. John Dodson certainly has something to say about that as well. Kind of like a silver medal fight for the weight class. Cejudo, I was kind of hoping to see Dodson, but if he is at some point, that doesn't seem to be on pace here. Cejudo, it's certainly not earning a title shot even if he wins here. He got smashed by Johnson. He needs to rebound and put some fights together. Benavidez did get knocked out by DJ in his when they fought last as well, but he's put together a much better run recently, and nobody's clamoring to see them face off again, but technically he's 0-1 as a title challenger, so he could warrant a shot with a win here. I could see it happening. And keep in mind, Benavidez' only career losses, 2 to Dominic Cruz, 2 to Demetrious Johnson. That's nothing to sneeze at. Cejudo has said he's coming off his first career loss, so he could be looking for one of those jumps in capabilities or improvements or refocus after you suffer that first defeat. And it was a pretty lopsided and quick loss. We do have here an Olympic caliber wrestler, medalist in Cejudo, taking on a Team Alpha male wrestler. So, one of the top MMA wrestling gyms out there, going head to head with an elite level wrestler. Obviously, in just a straight wrestling fight, you favor the Olympic guy, but this is not wrestling. This is MMA. Cejudo, though, his UFC resume, he kind of took advantage of the lack of depth in the division, or at least lack of depth of guys that haven't fought for the title. Beating Dustin Kimura, Chris Carriazo, former title challenger, Chico Camus in a very close fight, and then a split decision win over Jussier Formiga is what got him the title shot. So not a huge lineup of killers. When you look at Benavidez has fought, in addition to fighting Demetrious Johnson, he has fought and defeated Formiga or defeated in some manner. So certainly he has the better resume and a longer resume as well. Both guys, that's not mentioning his wins at bantamweight either. Both guys are 5'4", 1 inch reach advantage for Joe. Cejudo is the younger man by 3 years, and keep in mind, Cejudo has had issues, and Joe threw it right in his face on the show, at making weight and showing up for fights, and that's something we have to wonder, is that going to affect him here, especially with the early weigh-ins, because I believe this is the first time he will face the early weigh-in scenario, and that could take a lot out of him. First thing worth noting, the striking stats, again, almost even. But again, better and bigger sample size for Joseph Benavidez, so it kind of negates that fact, but still, they're very close. So take that for what it's worth. Benavidez, he has been taken down in fights before. That's worth talking about. Timothy Elliott took him down 3 times. Dustin Ortiz took him down twice. Johnson put him on his back 5 times. He is a good scrambler. He's difficult to take down. Bogatinov, who's a very good wrestler, had a partial completion before Benavidez popped right back up to his feet. Overall, he's fairly difficult to take off his feet. He's harder to keep down as well, and that takes away a key element, a potential element of Cejudo's attack. We'll talk about why it's only a potential element, not a certain element. But it takes away something that Henry certainly could rely on in this fight and might not be there to rely on. We've also seen Benavidez go offensive with his wrestling with minimal, success. But more importantly, he'll use it to set up his strikes. He'll shoot in for a takedown and fire with a right hand over the top and look to set up that offensive attack by disguising it with something else. I like that. He tends to rush forward a little bit behind his strikes. Does use a lot of movement when he's attacking, changes stances periodically. He will use some head movement and fakes, which I like, to keep his opponent guessing before he comes in. Deception to set up his punches is key to his effectiveness. He still throws a nice step in, big right hand. He'll throw a head kick. He snaps that up pretty good. Lots of low kicks, which can be very effective as well. He'll target the body. He does a good job. He doesn't have a ton of power, but he does a good job of backing up his opponents, and he tends to be a bit of a slicer with his hands, which when he chops down, which can cut guys open, which, against Cejudo, that's something he hasn't dealt with a lot, and he could take him out of his element. Now, going back to the wrestling of the Olympian, Cejudo, he has 9 takedowns in his last 3 wins. He had 6 versus Carriazo, but against Chico Camus, he went 1 for 15. And Camus did a very good job of shutting him down in that fight. Cejudo overall, 2.39 takedowns per fight at a 35% completion rate. Those aren't Olympic numbers, so you wonder how good has his Olympic wrestling converted to mixed martial arts. It hasn't translated that well, I don't think, but he has multiple opportunities, and certainly this fight would go a long way to changing that. Defensively has been certainly a better opportunity, 100% takedown defense. We haven't seen a lot of guys shooting in to try and take him down. Johnson didn't really get a huge opportunity because he took him out of there so quickly. But Cejudo, he had trouble taking Camus down, as I mentioned, but he won that fight primarily on his feet, and that's something he showed he can do, and that's probably something he's focused on, is, I want to be like a Daniel Cormier and go from being a very good wrestler to a very good striker and a multi-threat. The big thing is melding those two offensive attacks together. He has a pretty good right hand. He'll throw a nice 1-2 and then a body kick to the body, which can be an effective attack as well. He has some decent Muay Thai striking. It's a step up in competition, just like Demetrious Johnson was. Benavidez is a step up in competition from the guys he's been employing it against. He hasn't shown a ton of power, a lot of decisions since moving up in the quality of opponent. And his speed, it's not bad, but it's certainly not overwhelming. It's not John Dodson or Demetrious Johnson so that's something Benavidez I would give him the slight advantage in. At times, Cejudo tends to load up a little bit too much. Camus was showing that as the more fluid striker, he was having success outlanding him. Camus cracked him a couple times. Formiga had success in the feet, showed his improving striking offense as well. Cejudo, he needs to be at his best here. He needs to put forth a performance far better than we've seen out of anything in the UFC. He can't afford any slowdowns. That early weight cut, making weight is certainly an issue getting down there. But I'd say he has to find success with his wrestling in this fight to be successful overall. Land takedowns. Keep Benavidez guessing as to what you're going to do. It will make his striking more effective. I think he's going to struggle to get Joe's respect, especially if he can't score takedowns. He's not going to do it with his power. He doesn't have the ability to back him off with just his strikes by himself. I think if this fight's close early on, maybe a back and forth round 1, a close round 2, I think if it's tight, I think Benavidez pulls away in the third round if he doesn't beat him outright through the first 2 rounds. I think Benavidez is going to outwork him on the feet overall. He's going to land more strikes. They're going to have the greater impact. He'll just have more variety overall. He'll defend those takedowns and force Cejudo to stand with him. And my prediction is Joseph Benavidez to defeat Henry Cejudo by decision. And now we move to the main event of the evening. Partially I would need to say spoiler alert for this matchup. Again, there's been multiple things out there potentially alluding to who won the tournament is getting to fight Demetrious Johnson for the title. So I'll give my prediction based on that. This also is the individual I thought was going to win the tournament from the get-go. So here we are in the flyweight division as the champion, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, 24 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, takes on the title challenger, Timothy Elliott, with a record of 13 wins and 6 defeats. Elliott had, I said he was my pick from the start of the tournament to win the whole thing, and multiple sources have shown that he possibly is the winner. If that is wrong, it turns out his opponent in the finals in a couple of nights wins. I will certainly give my breakdowns and for that fight and put it on my website. Physically, Elliott 5'7" versus the 5'3" Mighty Mouse, so he's 4 inches taller. Johnson will actually have the 1-inch reach advantage, and they are the same age. Now, for Timmy Elliott, he has gone 3-0 since getting cut from the UFC, all under the Legacy banner. In his debut for that promotion, he won the title. He defended it in 2 fights since, including a matchup with Ilya Santos, a fellow UFC veteran, and Pedro Nobre, another short-lived UFC fighter. He defeated both of them. His record's not bad. He KO'd Jens Pulver back in 2011 prior to coming to the Octagon. He lost in his debut to John Dodson in a competitive fight. He went 2-0 after that, picked up a couple of wins. And then you look at the guys he lost to: Ali Bogatinov, Joseph Benavidez, and Zach Makovsky. 2 former title challengers, 3 if you count Dodson. And then one of the better guys who hasn't yet to fight for the title. So despite he got cut, and I kind of thought it was out of place considering the level of competition he was fighting. But still, he certainly made his way back. Going into the tournament, he was ranked 3rd overall. He beat the 14th ranked fighter in the opening round by submission. Submitted the 6th ranked fighter in the next round, also submitted him by submission. Yes, you get the point there. He faced the 15th ranked guy in the semifinals, who was a Cinderella story in his own right, winning 2 pretty sizable upsets to get there. Went to majority decision for the win there, and he is facing, or has already faced, the 5th ranked fighter in the finals. I don't know the result of that matchup, how he won, if he did in fact win. When you look at Demetrious Johnson, the guy has won 10 fights in a row. He's undefeated in his last 11, dating back to the Ian McCall draw, which was the last time we saw Johnson actually look human in a fight, which also was his flyweight debut, I believe. I'm correct in saying that. Prior to that, it was the loss to Dominic Cruz for the title. And you look at this and you wonder to yourself, is there some complacency going to seep in Demetrious Johnson? Is he motivated? He's facing a winner of the Ultimate Fighter. He's not even facing a guy ranked in the top 15 because he's beat most of them. Yeah, he's beaten most of the best. John Lineker is probably one of the few guys that fought in this division that didn't get a chance to fight for the title because of his inability to make weight. It would have been a very fun fight, a fight I would look forward to, but certainly too much of a risk. And now he's making waves as a bantamweight. DJ could be looking to move up to 135 pounds at some point for a shot at the title. Look at that double division title shot, like we just saw a certain Conor McGregor pick up. Hold on to his belt in case he loses. Go back down and fight at 125. But, honestly, there's not a ton left for Johnson if he wins this fight. Jussier Formiga is probably the best that he hasn't faced. You've got Wilson Hayes, Zach Makovsky. Some of these guys have suffered recent defeats. Louis Smoka, I keep calling Luis, but it's Louis Smoka. That big loss to Brandon Moreno certainly took him out. Ray Borg, also Justin Scoggins was having some success. Then he goes up to bantamweight after failing to make weight and gets submitted. You're welcome. There's other guys like Ben Nguyen and Sergio Pettis, but again, they're very inexperienced. They're not ready for shots at the title. And then there's a whole host of rematches. Kayuchi Horiguchi is probably the most notable one out there, other than Benavidez. But honestly, you wonder how many times can they run this back until they just say, it's time to move on. Ultimately, there I go again. Johnson can only hurt his image as champion. He's basically fighting till he loses or something happens, that freak knockout or something, an injury even that cost him the title. Where he could walk away, go up to 135 and say, I was the champ for 125, no one took it away from me but me. I don't know. So, back to the fight. So how does Tim Elliott win this matchup? You remember George St. Pierre versus Matt Serra? Same situation. Winner of the Ultimate Fighter going to fight an untouchable champion, and Serra knocks him out. I think Tim Elliott needs something like that. He needs to crack Johnson on the feet, hurt him, get him reeling, and finish him, or catch him in a freak submission. He does like chokes. It's something he's capable of. We'll see. it's not like he's fighting over his head. That he's fought the best of the best leading up to this. Elliott likes use a lot of movement, but he struggled to land strikes consistently against Bogatinov in that matchup, despite the fact he used a lot of movement and had Bogatinov chasing him at times. And again, you're playing Mighty Mouse's game. You are second best in most scenarios. When he fought Benavidez, he almost big brother Joseph Benavidez. He landed some takedowns early, was really pushing him around the cage, but eventually got caught in the submission and got tapped out with his feet, actually. He was caught up Benavidez had him tied up so tight he had to tap with his feet. I don't think he's going to be able to match the output of Demetrious Johnson. He could stay competitive for a bit, but eventually DJ's speed and accuracy and superior technique is just going to be too much for him. I think Johnson will come in focus. He's the type of guy who recognizes what's at stake here. His reign could be completely annihilated by a loss of this magnitude. He has some bigger paydays ahead with possible fights at 135 pounds on the horizon. I think Johnson uses his speed to avoid an attack, get in, get out, keep Elliott guessing. I think he'll land some takedowns to put Elliott Johnson to defeat Timothy Elliott by submission. So those are my 6 main card predictions for UFC. It's Ultimate Fighter finale, Ultimate Fighter 24 finale. It's very late here where I am right now, so I'm trying to get this done so I can go to bed and get up in a few minutes to go to work. All of my prelim predictions, as per usual, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I thank you all for tuning in. Certainly consider buying the bet packs. I've had some success lately. Again, I'm going to be posting the same bet pack. It'll be 2 breakdowns, one for big budget guys and one for looking to spend a little and take some risks to try and win a lot. And, I'm trying to have help everybody. I'm not gearing my work solely to the guys who have all kinds of money. And people laud themselves, oh, look at me, I won these 3 single fights and my people want a lot of money. There's a lot of people out there who don't have that type of money to spend. They just want to have a good time. They want to have a few parlays out there and see if they can turn a little bit of cash into a lot of cash and enjoy it that way. So I'll be making those bets for you guys. Thanks for tuning in as always, folks. And we get lots of fights. We got a doubleheader coming up not that far from now, so we got to get to work. Talk to you later.